hakafos. Everybody's dancing. We finished the whole Torah, and now we'll start again. The Simchas Torah, we dance with the Torah. Round and round the bima will go. 7 hakafos, everybody's dancing. We finished the whole Torah, and now we'll start again.
All right. Hello, welcome to Rhythms of the Jewish Year, Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. We're glad you're here. I am Ellen Dietrich, and I am your host tonight. This session is brought to you by The Orchard, which is a collaborative of organizations, 25 organizations who are working together towards excellence in Jewish early childhood education. The Orchard is a joint initiative that celebrates, networks, and advances the professional learning of educators in Jewish early childhood centers. This session is being recorded, and we understand that some people don't wish to be recorded. So if that's the case for you, you are welcome to turn off your camera. Although if you stay visible, that would be great so we can all feel like we're together. And I'll be your tech support. So if you need anything, I am labeled as host, and you can chat with me for any technical needs that you have or any questions that come up. We want everyone to feel they belong at the Orchard. So we suggest that you change your Zoom name to include your agency or your school, and if you're comfortable, your pronouns. And at the bottom of your screen, you can find the closed captioning. You have the option to keep it on, turn it off, whatever works for you, but we're hoping that everyone feels welcome, respected, safe, and included with those actions. So feel free to reach out in the chat if there's anything you need tonight. And now I will turn it over to our amazing trio here, and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. I am Veronica Maravankin, and I am the director of the Sheva Center for Early Childhood Jewish Education and Engagement at JCC Association of North America. And I'm Zooming from Florida, and I'm being joined by my colleagues. I'm going to pass the torch.
I'm Lisa Q, and I'm the program director for the Sheva Center, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
And I am Judy Morashik. I'm coming to you from Colorado, where I work for a group called the FSHAR Project, and I do coaching and consulting and training for all the Jewish early childhood programs in the Boulder and Denver area. And I'm going to advance our, whoops, not to the music again. So we are really excited to have you here for our first Rhythms of the Jewish Year session for this year, focused on Simchat Torah and Shemini Atzeret. And we just are hoping tonight for this session, our goals for the session are that it'll help you grow your basic knowledge of Simchat Torah and its companion and kind of less familiar holiday of Shemini Atzeret, along with the rituals and traditions that accompany them. So there's two main reasons that we really want to do this. And one is that we want to support you in getting to a place of comfort and confidence related to what these holidays and their related traditions are all about, if you're not already familiar with them. And that feels really important, especially if you didn't grow up with these holidays and the rituals and traditions are unfamiliar to you, because it'll make it much more comfortable facilitating any learning in your classroom around them. And then secondly, we hope you'll be able to make some kind of personal connection to some of the underlying messages of the holidays, as they're pretty universal and most everybody can connect to them. And doing that can really support your feeling of authenticity when you are helping children and families make connections to them in your job. We're also going to spend some time actively uncovering some of the big ideas that are at the core of these holidays, kind of underneath the surface, that have potential for deeper exploration with children and families. And the final goal for tonight is that even though this is at the end of a long day of work, especially for those of you coming from the East Coast, hopefully we'll be activating your brains and you'll come away inspired with some new possibilities for planning curriculum experiences around the holiday. The hope is, as always, with these holiday sessions, that no matter where you are on your journey in the field of Jewish ECE, whether you're first learning about Simchat Torah tonight, or you've been teaching in Jewish settings forever, you'll be sparked and energized around some possibilities, some new possibilities. So we feel the first step in planning for meaningful curriculum around experiences around holidays, rather than starting by pulling out your planning form to fill in lots of activities, is to engage in some study and some learning yourself. And in these weeks that lead up to Simchat Torah, you engage some learning about the holiday and learn the basics of what it's about and how it's celebrated. And that's some of what we're going to be doing here tonight. With a few of our pieces of learning tonight, we'll also engage you in some deeper thinking to begin to uncover some of the leading ideas that are below the surface and have potential for that deeper investigation in your classrooms. And we'll share some curriculum possibilities to kind of get your wheels turning. We're hoping all of this learning will, as I mentioned, help you personally connect with what the holiday is all about, find what resonates with you and what you feel is most appropriate to more deeply explore with your particular group of children and families this year. And gaining that deeper understanding of the rituals associated with the Jewish celebrations can really help you think about ways to make them authentically come alive in your classroom. And this helps build memories and positive associations around the holidays for the children. And that's, of course, easier to do if you have a level of comfort and confidence about what they're all about. Also, when we meaningfully explore and investigate one of those bigger ideas that underlies the holiday, it can lead to expanding and opening up new ways in which you'll celebrate it this year, even if you're already familiar with it. So one final thought here is that with this being the last holiday in the cluster of celebrations you're about to go through that make up the high holidays, which by the time you get to this holiday, you might be kind of grateful for because there's a lot of them. And being the last one that you're going to be celebrating, it can have the benefit of giving you time in the following weeks after the holiday to keep a thread of a big idea that's been resonating with the group going at some level without feeling like you have to jump into planning for another holiday, which does happen a lot with these.
I'm really glad you said that, Judy, because we're going to talk about big ideas now and how we can build our understanding and the through lines through all the holidays and keep them going, sometimes all year long. So part of our study is not just about the holiday or the topic itself, but learning how to plan and think about ideas and concepts associated with whatever the topic is. And often we think about curriculum in terms of themes, like something we have to cover. So we look at what we did last year and we peek into a colleague's classroom and we consult Etsy and Pinterest. I am totally guilty of that. It's a guilty pleasure, but sometimes I find really great things on there. And, we might read books that give us some ideas, but when we work with big ideas instead of the activity as the central focus, our brains start to make that mind shift from covering a topic to uncovering what lies beneath in the minds of the children and yours, and make connections to the community and the deeper meaning within a topic. So let's talk a little bit about what a big idea is, why we use them to plan, and we'll give some examples of that knowledge building along the way. So we're going to define what a big idea is. So it's different from a theme. I often see teachers running around trying to get as many activities as possible, like it's an activity game show, of how many things can I figure out to do this week related to whatever theme it is. What am I going to put on my table? And when we're diving into the Jewish holidays with young children, there's some big themes, sometimes some heavy themes, some spiritual themes, some worldly themes that we don't want to lose sight of. So a big idea versus a weekly theme, a big idea supports and sustains and deepens knowledge building for children. And it should provoke thinking and generate even more questions. It should be relevant to children's interests. So one exploration of Rosh Hashanah or Simchat Torah will not look the same in every context, depending on what your community is. And it should support children's curiosity and your own within and beyond the school and home. They're often framed, as you'll see, as questions or statements, and they can be applied across multiple content areas. So let's look at a little example on the next slide. So, the holidays creep up on us, and we're in that time when they just come in rapid fire, and they're time sensitive. It's, it comes when it comes, and we have to address it. So we dive in with the activity as our main entry point. And it can look like this, like, okay, Rosh Hashanah is coming. I'm going to cut up apples. I'm going to make applesauce. I saw a really cute thing on little paper shofars that I can make. It's the birthday of the world, so we're going to make a birthday cake for the birthday of the world. There's something about honey here that's making me think about bees. So we'll make some little bees out of pipe cleaners. And then I'll put some of those honey dipping sticks and hexagons on one of my tables, and that will be an interesting play experience. Now, these all by themselves they're not horrible. You might actually be doing some of these, but our urging for you is to do them with some forethought and to make sure you have a connection to the thing that you're studying. So let's take a really concrete example now. Let's say you wanted to study about plants. So this is a conceptual map or a web. You can call it all kinds of things. And in order to offer really strong curriculum that's relevant to children's learning and their lives, we've got to do some work ourselves. So there's lots of strategies, but I'm going to show you this mapping strategy because it's really simple. You don't need a special form to do it. You can just write this, make a circle on a piece of paper and start brainstorming. But it's a great place to do your own thinking, maybe after doing a little reading and learning, or maybe before and after. So our own introspection, our reflection, our thinking is going to surface our provocations, our proposals, our offerings for future learning. So here's what it might look like for a group of teachers who was doing some thinking about plants. So the teachers were thinking and they were like, okay, what do I want to know? Like, I remember something from high school about chlorophyll and photosynthesis. Like, why are the leaves green? And oh, I have a garden, but why do some plants grow better inside and some outside? And how can I have a successful garden? And then they might start talking about what children might be curious about, what they might be interested in. How do plants get bigger? Oh, I think they'll be really interested in taking care of plants. You know how they love to like pour water. They might want to know about plants you can eat because when we're outside, they try and pick things up and put them in their mouth and they're curious about taste. And We did some smelling of flowers. There's those honeysuckles that we walk by on the way to the playground. So now we kind of have something. We have some entry points for longer term curriculum and investigations that we did before than we might have before if we just said, okay, so I'm going to put the seeds in the plastic bag and put them on the window, and we'll put some in pots. And it's just the activity is the focal point rather than these questions and thinking. So now let's look at the example of Rosh Hashanah, because it's coming up, and there's some great other videos. Judy just made an amazing presentation on Rosh Hashanah that you must see. And if you got our brief from JCC, it's in our resource library. But let's go back to this example. If teachers engage in the mapping exercise, then their planning will look quite different. So let's take a peek at that. Here we go. So take a look. This is very different from what we had before about dipping apples in honey and making the other little bees. The world can wake up and go to sleep, and so do we. We have birthdays, and so does the world. There's that cake. There are some moments in our lives that feel sweet. And for Yom Kippur, because we're moving into that space, people make mistakes and talk about them with each other. So you may have done some really concrete thinking around bees and honey and the shofar. And, we have an agenda here with a Jewish holiday. We want to be selective in thinking about children's interests and what we want to connect back to the holiday, the big idea of the holiday. These are big ideas. I wonder if sweetness, like what makes something sweet? I wonder if I talked with the children about that. What does it mean to have a sweet year? And as adults and children move from concrete thinking, we're in the business of really understanding what's relevant and important in the context of the holiday. It doesn't mean you can't study about bees and honey. It doesn't mean you can't talk about the sound of the shofar and calling people together. But this idea of calling people together has to be part of the conversation if we're talking about shofar. So you want to be thinking consistently about how you're going to connect the holidays, the rituals, the meaning to the children. And the big ideas come from our own curiosity about a topic and our own thinking about what we think children will be interested in. So we're going to do a little learning about Simchat Torah, and then we'll practice just in our own minds as you go along this brainstorming. So as you listen to Judy, to Veronica, to me, give you some teaching and some curriculum entry points, jot down where you think some of those big ideas might be, what questions are coming up for you, because we might want to hear about them later.
So it's time now to replace the word plants or to replace the word Rosh Hashanah with the holiday that we are exploring tonight. And actually, I just said holiday, but we are actually exploring two holidays. So let me talk a little bit about that. So the first holiday is Shmini Atzeret, and the second one, the second day, is Simchat Torah. And growing up in Argentina, I almost like never heard about Shmini Atzeret, or maybe I just heard it like as a fleeting second. But the holiday that I really heard and resonated with me was Simchat Torah. And this is not like by chance. Outside of Israel, which is called the diaspora, Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah I celebrated in two separate holidays. But in Israel, it's celebrated together in one day. So this is why some people might say, I kind of hear one holiday. Some people might say, oh no, I'm used to two holidays. So let's go to the very, very basic. What is Shmini Atzeret? Shmini means the eighth, and Atzeret means assembly. So Shmini Atzeret is the assembly of the eighth day. Now the eighth day of what? The eighth day after the 7 days of Sukkot. So Shmini Atzeret is the first day immediately following the 7 days of the holiday of Sukkot. So it is connected with Sukkot, but it's a separate holiday. And it is a day to hold on a bit longer to the holiday of Sukkot. And we might continue to sit in the Sukkah. However, we might not perform some of the rituals of the holiday of Sukkot, like shaking the lulav and some other rituals. And it's a day of pause between Sukkot and Simchat Torah. What is Simchat Torah? Simchat means joy or rejoicing. And Torah is the holiest book of the Jewish people. And in a few slides, Lisa is going to go in depth about what is the Torah, but think about the Torah like a book, right? And just like a book that we begin reading and we finish reading, except that the Torah is a cycle. We read it in a cycle. Every time we finish, we immediately after begin. So instead of doing pages and then you close it, no, it's kind of in a circular. It's not by chance that it's a scroll, but I will let Lisa talk about that. So the holiday of Simchat Torah is the holiday in which we rejoice for finishing reading the Torah, the book, and beginning in the same moment, the same day, to read the Torah all over again. So Simchat Torah is not a biblical festival such as Sukkot, and it was not a rabbinically instituted festival commemorating a historical event like Hanukkah or Purim. Therefore, it can be argued that it has less significance and meaning. However, it developed over time as an expression of the people's love for the Torah and for learning from the Torah, which is a commandment. And it gives the festival deep significance and importance. So by the time Simchat Torah, which grew from grassroots and has spread throughout the Jewish world, Jews had lost virtually everything: their land, their home, their freedom, their independence, the temple. That's when they spread all over the world and created what is called the diaspora. And they lost everything that has once been their source of joy. So all that they had left was the book. So learning Torah, that book, which could be taken with us wherever we find ourselves, and which united the dispersed and fractured Jewish people, became critical to Jewish survival and for the survival of Judaism. So there is a saying that many state that more than the Jewish people preserved the Torah preserved the Jewish people. So for this reason, Simchat Torah became hugely important to the Jewish people as a celebration of the Torah and the mitzvah, the commandment of learning the Torah. Simchat Torah is one of the most, one of the highest expressions of the Jewish spirit. So let's go into some of the traditions. Actually, believe it or not, Shmini Atzeret, besides being the last day in which we sit in the Sukkah, has one tradition, which is recite a prayer for the rain. So this is the beginning in Israel of the growing season. And we pray for rain because we know that rain is important for growth. So what are the implications? What are the curriculum possibilities in early childhood? So how might we explore the concept of praying for rain with young children? And these are some of the potential questions to explore with the children. What does it mean to pray for something? And why would we pray for rain? In what ways is rain good for the earth? How does rain make you feel? And how might rain make the earth feel? We are getting into almost the emotional layer of rain, right? How is it making us feel? How might it make the earth feel? Why the earth might need it, right? Why might we need it? So what might the process of creating a classroom prayer for the rain, Geshem is the Hebrew word for rain, with the children look like? What if we, after learning about the rain and talking about how it's making us feel, and again, to explore, after exploring some of these questions, what if we engage in an exercise of constructing a prayer for rain? We can also have a sentence like, rain is to the earth was that is to me. So we can compare and contrast us and the earth and our relationship with the rain. Now, we get lots of teachers who teach infant and toddlers and ask us, what about us? We cannot engage in conversation with children about what rain means. Guess what? You might not choose to explore this avenue. You might choose to explore another big idea of the holiday of Simchat Torah that very, very shortly we'll get into it. So never forget the power of the books as springboards for conversations. Many, many times books elicit in children ideas that have lots of potential to continue to explore.
Can I add something too,
Of
Veronica,
course.
just about if you do go in some angle of creating a prayer for the rain, it could take so many different forms. It could be a song, it could be a piece of artwork, it could be a comment from each child and be a school-wide or just a classroom. There's so much possibility for doing that. So
Thank you, Judy.
And Judy, I was thinking about what does a prayer for rain look like if you're in San Antonio, Texas, versus where I am in Seattle, and how that context, where here there's no bad weather, only bad clothing, because we go out in the rain all the time, and other people might stay indoors. So there's so many possibilities for exploring that. Like Veronica Shemini Atzeret was not something I grew up with or knew about, and I'm learning more like every day.
Right. And Ellen put in the chat there that Reform synagogues also celebrated as one day. Many of the 2-day holidays are celebrated as one in Reform traditions.
And Lisa, you made me think about when you said, what does a prayer for the rain might look in one place of United States versus another? You made me think about the importance of understanding our context, right? Where do we live? Who are our children? Which one is our community? Because we only want to explore topics that are relevant to the children with which we can connect. And as you will see, there are many, many, many big ideas that you can explore, and you cannot explore them all. So you might say, do you know what? Where I am, exploring the rain is not so relevant. So I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to go another route. So thank you.
All right, let's talk about the Torah, which is the focal point of this holiday in many ways, in terms of an artifact. So the Hebrew word Torah literally means direction or instruction, and the root Yud Resh He originally meant to throw or shoot an arrow. So for the vocabulary and folks who love languages, the noun is a causative conjugation. It's a way of saying that it literally means to cause something or someone to move in a straight line, to move in a true way. And so it's something that directs, having connotations of offering a strong and virtuous guidance. The Hebrew word also means the teachings, and it's from a physical standpoint, it's this parchment scroll. You can see a picture of it on the screen. containing what are known as the 5 books of Moses. Some people refer to this as the Old Testament, with the Bible being the New Testament, but it's the very beginning of the Bible and the Bible story, starting with Genesis. And it tells the story of the very beginnings of the Jewish people. And within it are the basis of all Jewish law and practice. So people refer to the Torah to think, and in Jewish tradition, there's very much an approach of discussion and thinking about what's in there. So there's always room for discussion, and that's an important part of the reading. They're kept in synagogues, typically in a special cabinet called an ark. And Veronica, when you were talking about like this book that could move with people, the ark can travel, although there are some elaborate permanent arks in synagogues that are very beautiful to see. In Judaism, the scrolls are really considered the holiest objects. They're handled with care, with affection. We don't touch the parchment with our bare hands. People use something called a yad, which is like a cool little pointer with a little hand with a finger on it. And we look at the words and follow along that way. And it's divided into 54 separate portions, or parshat. People talk about the parsha for the week. What is the teaching this week? Because we read one every week and we're kind of keeping up. It's like a big story. And it marks the end of one cycle, Simchat Torah, and the beginning of a new one, which we'll talk more about in this idea of Torah, of Simchat Torah. So let's talk about some of the curriculum possibilities. One is to think about it as a big book. So notice that we're not saying you should make a book with the children as an activity. You can, but you want to make sure you're linking it to the idea that the Torah is a big, important book that we read regularly, often aloud and in community, although people do study on their own. And it has a lot of big, important words. I was thinking about this lovely book called Martin's Big Words, a great lead into Martin Luther King's birthday, but it focuses on the different sizes of words and the texts, and the Torah has an interesting corollary there, where there are big important words and big important letters even that mark the beginning of certain passages. So for children to be able to see what it looks like would be important. It has big stories, the stories of the Jewish people. So you want to be thinking about, what are the relevant stories, these Bible stories as they're known, to explore with children? You have to research them yourself, because there are many folks, and I've seen this happen with many, many different kinds of books, where you're like, I'm going to read this fun book on this holiday or this story. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, I'm not sure this is the direction I would have gone. I would have wanted to learn more about it. So this is where your own learning and reading is really important, like what's developmentally appropriate for this group of children. And you want to offer key vocabulary, words with accompanying pictures, opportunities to write those words, to copy them, to use them in their own stories, artwork, conversations. I always had lots of cards around with the different vocabulary and accompanying pictures. And you can see a beautiful representation here where children were learning about the V'ahavta, be kind to other people like you and want them to be kind to you, and you will love, right? This idea of love from this particular vocabulary, but you could do the same with other words from the Torah. So you're listening for and talking with children about their own big words, important words, and you're making them visible in the community. So this is a lovely piece of documentation. But speaking of the children's words and stories, another sort of curriculum possibility on the next slide is to think with children about what their story is. The story of our classroom community. How do we make that story visible? Is there a way for us, Judy, there it is. Is there a way for us to build that story throughout the year and make it visible? What will that look like in our room? I wonder what materials we'd use. What kinds of things would we be writing down? How would it be displayed? Is it in a book with pages? Is it posted around our room? Are we putting it into a scroll? And how do we create ritual around revisiting our story throughout the year? And then finally, there's the story of each child in the classroom, or each adult in the classroom. We make up that collective community. How do we collect their stories? Many have journey books or portfolios or ways for children to even keep track of their own endeavors. What form would the documentation of these stories take, so that children can access their own stories and the stories of their community?
Great. Thanks, Lisa. So clearly the Torah is at the heart of this holiday, and Lisa just let us in some learning on kind of literally what it is and how that might inspire some connected curriculum explorations. These pieces of text here, we're going to look at. Hopefully they'll support us in thinking about some of the big ideas that might be under the concept of the Torah being that code of ethics to live by, because it is the key source of ethics in Judaism. And so what we're going to do here, we're going to, for a couple of slides, do a little learning with some text and hopefully spark that activating your brain that I said might be tough at this hour, but hopefully we will. And what we're going to do here, if you've done other rhythm sessions, we're going to have the text. I'll read it out loud to you. And as I'm reading it aloud, if you can listen and be thinking of words, that literal words that are in there, or words that come to mind, or ideas that stand out to you, as having potential to be maybe connected to some big ideas here. Just kind of play with it and write them down, jot them down. We'll be sharing them in the chat in a moment. And let me read this aloud here. So Rabbi Hillel, an ancient Jewish sage and scholar, said, "What is hateful to yourself, do not do to your fellow man." This is the entire Torah. The rest is just commentary. Go and study. So the most important source of ethical guidance for Jews is the Torah. The 613 mitzvot, or commandments in the Torah, offer the broadest application of Jewish ethical principles. These mitzvot represent the foundational tenets of Jewish ethics and consist of both positive commands, which are acts we should perform, and negative commands, acts we should refrain from performing. On Simchat Torah, as we read the concluding words of Deuteronomy, the final book of the Torah, and beginning words of Genesis, let us be reminded that the message is clear. Life is a cycle that requires us to be constantly reminded to strive to be the best that we can be. We, like Moses and our ancestors, are not perfect, but we can overcome those weaknesses and become stronger. We can create ourselves anew and continuously strive for greatness. May each of us embrace the cycle that awaits us and be inspired by the messages that it teaches us. So I would like for people to think about if anything came up in your listening there that has potential here as a big idea around the Torah as an ethical document for us to get some curriculum rolling for kids. Just put it in the chat if there's anything that came to mind in any of that text.
I was just going to say, I'm Leela Jenkins and I work at the ECEC at Temple Emmanuel in Dallas. And I think that quote about what is hateful to you, do not do to another. I mean, that is so applicable at any age, because, you know, we're always saying, let's be nice to our friends, and our friend doesn't like it when you hit them and things like that. And so that goes right along with it. And I would love to present that to my students.
So that one has such, I mean, it's so applicable to all ages, and it's so accessible to what we already do in early childhood. And we can looking at that through a lens of Torah. You know, we're always doing that and helping kids. How many times do you say, now look at their face? Do they like this? we're doing that all the time. How can we become intentional in connecting that in our minds too? And let's look and see what else. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. How can we become, whoa, I've missed, whoa, there's a bunch in there. We're growing and becoming stronger. We're doing credos this year, and we can be stronger with our words. How can we become stronger and better? It's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are how we learn and grow. You can ask kids to work together to make a story. The first kid can start the first part second. The next part, go in a circle, kind of get that circularity of a tale. And at the end of the story, share what they expected to happen. So kind of that whole sense of the circularity here. No one is perfect. Maybe another day, use paper to record each member of the class, what they expect, sort of thinking ahead about how they expect to behave, how they're hoping to be and treat others, learning through our stories, exploring mistakes Moses made. So this whole idea of mistakes, great. So you can see how having a piece of text can get you thinking, and what comes from that, especially when you do it within a group setting in a community, can start sparking new thoughts. So before hearing your ideas, Veronica and Lisa and I did just that, and thinking about the text, and we're thinking about how might the text here inform some big ideas that could ultimately inform our teaching practice. And some of the things that we were thinking about in terms of possible curriculum possibilities here were that if we're thinking about Torah and how it compels us to do mitzvot, that was in the first part of the text here about the 613 mitzvot. So Torah compels us to do those mitzvot in order to be good, responsible, caring human beings. So Simchat Torah can be actually a launching point as educators to begin studying and exploring the mitzvot and the midot, which are the positive character traits that are at the heart of the Torah. So you can consider how you might build in a ritual for exploring them in a responsive way that's something more than like mitzvah of the week. It's more about how do we really look at who our kids are and what's going on in our classroom. And I really like this document on the slide. It comes from an article that I found many years ago by Eileen Vogelstein. And in it, it has these top 18 mitzvot and midot for early childhood, because not all of them are as accessible to our age groups. But perhaps using this as a guide, especially if you're not as familiar with them, you might notice that one is being demonstrated by your children, or maybe one is really not happening, and use that as a vehicle for raising children's awareness. And that might come in the form of smaller, large group conversations with children, depending on the situation, how you'd want to approach it. It might come through using a book and children's literature as a launching point for a conversation on it. It might be that you're constructing classroom routines that embody that value so that it can be built into the routine of your classroom. You'll see that the potential ways to support this, we very definitely put over time. So like an example might be that maybe you're in a school where there are lots of visitors who come in and observe the classrooms. And so you work with the children to create a ritual for how they're going to welcome guests that embodies that value of haknesat orchim, about welcoming guests. And it really allows you to take the time to unpack with kids, what does it really mean to welcome somebody? How does it feel when you're welcome? How do you think somebody else might feel when they're welcome? What can we do? And build in a ritual in your classroom that embodies that value. It could take on many other ways to embody many other values that are there, or mitzvot or midot. And we do have that hyperlinked on the slide deck. So when you access the recording in the slide deck, you can access it. And we'll probably put it in as a document that you can just have. So an important point here that I just mentioned is this idea of it being an ongoing process throughout the year, because we all know, working in this field, children don't become ethical, responsible human beings through a 1-month study or a 1-week study. It can be so much more than also just creating a list of rules, unpacking what it really means to be kind or respectful or fair, all the ethical things that we want children to get. That's a long-term process, not just for children, I think for adults as well, but certainly for young children. And so you can use children's literature, those conversations as a tool for really addressing it and continuing to come back to it and build it into your daily classroom routine. And the circularity that's built into Simchat Torah, the idea of endings starting into new beginnings, also the concept that many of you may be talking about now of teshuvah, which at this time of year, as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are approaching, we talk about teshuvah, and it's that idea that we all make mistakes and that we all have that opportunity to reflect and return to our best selves. And that idea of teshuvah is not just exclusive to Yom Kippur. This is something that we can do all year round. And taking on that idea of teshuvah and the circularity of Simchat Torah, I think can help us as educators of young children to keep a positive mindset and realistic expectations that remind us that children are on a journey of learning how to be in the world. And it's our job as educators, if we're being emotionally responsive educators, to understand that that's where they are developmentally. And it means that their moral development is still very much a work in progress. And we can see it as our role and responsibility to plan curriculum to support them on that journey of growth. And it's connected to this whole idea of how to be good people in the world, which is in essence what we're talking about in the ethics in the Torah. I do think that one of the final ways I would say that we do this is to always remember that we are models of all these things all the time. And that's the most powerful way you have of teaching, is to be modeling the things that you hope children are doing. Okay.
Thank you, Judy. So let's explore a different big idea that these pieces of text can elicit. So I'm going to read the first one. And as I read, let's do the same exercise as we did with Judy. Think about what are some big ideas that you can think of related to this holiday, and then we'll jot them in the chat. So Simchat Torah allows us to literally start over, moving in a circle from the farewell of Moses, which is the last story that the last chapter of the book tells, to the beginning of a new creation, which is the first story when we start the book all over again. Though the words of the Torah are always the same, Simchat Torah reminds us that as we change, our interpretations too may change. Each new person added to the circle makes the Torah grow. Simchat Torah is the end of a long season of holidays and marked by both completing and beginning the reading of the Torah. But we are not starting over in the same place with the Torah or in life. Rather, we are like spirals, moving into a new place that is deeply connected to the past. How will we understand or be guided by the Torah in this new cycle and year? So, what are some ideas that this text elicit in you? Let's see, what are you putting in the chat? What can we do better tomorrow? Yes, great idea to explore with the children. We always learn from our mistakes. Exploring cycles. What is a cycle? Life cycles, beginnings and endings. And beginnings and endings, right? Beginnings, we are at the beginning of the school year. So this is marking a cycle. So that is the big idea that Judy, Lisa, and I came up with. So, let's see, completing artwork through the week, puzzles, etc. Yes, that's a cycle. Yes, it's taking us through the week. Something that is in constant construction. As we change, we think of things differently. Yes. What is new in your class this year that makes you feel more capable this year? Yes, absolutely. These are all meaningful and relevant topics that we can enter in conversation with the children, and we can make it visible, right? Through photos, through documentation. So that's exactly the big idea that we thought about. So what are some of the curriculum possibilities for this big idea? And I just want to start by saying that we always think about how can we engage families in the learning process of the children. And this is a prime idea to engage families. And if you are working with infant and toddlers, this is a great opportunity to bring the families, to bring the parents into the conversation, into the thinking, for them to share on behalf of their family and on behalf of their children. So keep in mind that when you are teaching infant and toddlers, your students in many opportunities are the families, because you might not ask the infants, how did you grow? Where are you coming from? What is new this year? But these are all questions that you can ask the families, and there's no better question to ask a parent to tell about their children, to send pictures. So some entry points, if we are all like spirals, where are we coming from? How does our past impact who we are today? Where do we want to go? So we can ask for family stories from where we are coming from, right? And how our past impacting who we are today. Who do we look alike? Do we have some taste that we took from our families, or some traditions, or some hobbies, or etc., etc.
Veronica, Brett had put in too about connecting to the generations of the past and seeking questions around parents and grandparents in the chat.
Amazing, amazing, exactly. And thank you, Judy, because I don't see the chat.
I know. And there's another one in here similar from, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right. You can ask children how they're different from when they were the year before, how they're growing. And I can, was what we were thinking about as well.
Yeah. And I can even challenge that we can ask even 2 and 3 years old, because we can bring photos. We can ask the families, can you send photos from this moment in time a year ago? And we can show
them.
We can show the pictures, and we can compare and contrast. And maybe we don't engage in conversation if the children are not verbal yet, but we put them there so the children can go, because the children will go and will look at them and will internally reflect. And then we can be the broadcasters, right? We can say, look at Judy last year at this time, and look at Judy now, right? And look at Lisa, and look at it, and we can tell the story of them and of their evolution.
I had less gray hair. Yes, look at that.
Yeah, so did I. So thank you. Keep pointing if something comes up in the chat.
Yes.
We can ask the families. Imagine asking a family of an infant, of a newborn, what are we bringing? What is our gift to make our Torah, our story grow, right? The gift, what is the gift that each child is bringing to this, to the story of our family, to the story of our classroom community? And there is a book, maybe, and it's going to be, maybe not, maybe it's not, maybe there is a book. There's a book titled Maybe, and it's hyperlinked when you get the slide deck to the story, and it's all about the infinite potential that there is in each one of us. And that is a great springboard also to ask the children, to ask the families, where can we go? Where can we grow? So you can read in the quote that is in this slide, Simchat Torah is also a symbolic move from death to life. The death of Moses and of the old year, the birth of the new year, and the newly created plants, animals, and humans. It is the rebirth of the Torah that makes Simchat Torah a good time to celebrate our renewals and transformations. So what renewals and transformations can we celebrate with young children, right? And you have been writing in the chat some of these possibilities. And we can invite children and families to reflect on their own growth and new beginnings. We are the same in so many ways. Which ways? And we are different in so many other ways. Which ones? And we don't have to, to go far to, some of us are walking, some of us are talking, some of us used to use diapers and now we are using underwear, or we are sleeping in a new bed, we have a new classroom, we have new friends, a bike without training wheels, now we can swim. We have a new member of our family, a new lived experience. And these are all opportunities to bring the life of the children and of the families into our classrooms for them to reflect. And if we go back to what Lisa was talking, to make our own Torah, to make the book of our story.
Great. Thank you, Veronica. So we did want to share one other ritual for Simchat Torah, because this one is pretty fun for this age group. And there is a lot of dancing on Simchat Torah in synagogues. It's an expression of joy. There's a Hasidic saying that on Simchat Torah, we rejoice in the Torah, and the Torah rejoices in us. The Torah too wants to dance, so we become the Torah's dancing feet. And so we're not going to have time to go through and do a whole text study with this, but I did want to quickly read this one. That open, the Torah enables you to read, chant, consume ancient words, leading you to new vistas of understanding. Closed, the Torah proudly sits in the ark, where it sits in the synagogue, waiting to be held and embraced. Holding and dancing with the Torah, a bright light is cast into the darkness, reinforcing the image of Torah as or, light, that's Hebrew for light, a light that will infuse us so we too can be a transmitter of light into the world of its principles. So at Simchat Torah, there's a lot of joyous parading with flags, and there's a tradition that the Torah scrolls are paraded around, circling the bima 7 times. And the bima is the podium on which the Torah is placed when it's unscrolled a bit in red. And these circles are called hakafot, which translates to going around. And Ellie, am I pronouncing? I hear all these different pronunciations. Is the accent on the first or the second syllable? Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted. Always need to ask in Israeli.
It's akafot.
Hakafot?
Akafot.
Hakafot.
Yes.
Got it? Okay, so hakafot. And so it means going around. And there are the hakafot are symbol of the joy of Torah study. So actually, when we participate in the hakafot while we're dancing, I think it's doubly joyful. There's also some symbolism in the number 7. 7's kind of the magic number in Judaism. And it can represent the idea of completion, like the 7 days it took for creation. And now we're celebrating the completion of a cycle of reading the Torah. So how this might translate, and some of you may have lots of things you already do in your classrooms for this holiday, but I think dancing has a lot of potential. It could be because I love to go dancing, but I think most children love to go dancing too, anywhere they are. So dancing is really an expression. It can be an expression of emotion. It also is a natural high. It actually brings joy when you're dancing, especially if you're dancing with other people and holding hands and connected to them. And it's not just for children, but children, you know, you've probably witnessed it with your children, how they get up and spontaneously dance at your Shabbat gatherings when you're in the classroom, and how much joy there is in dancing. So connecting with this tradition can be really fun. So we dance with the Torah on Simchat Torah because we cherish it. And that could be a really great vocabulary word to introduce and find out, like, what do children cherish? With younger children, you also know, with all children, we kind of know what they cherish in terms of their transitional objects and loveys and all that. And we could explore what they cherish and maybe dance with cherished objects or people that they cherish. And it might be kind of interesting to organize how we're going to count 7 times for the hakafot of dancing around the classroom, and how you actually count that could be quite an interesting experience with a group of children. How joyful the moment might be, and how might you capture it and share that rejoicing and joyful moment with their parents. Rejoicing is another really cool vocabulary word at this time. Just as an aside, you also could play around with using dance and movement as a way to express other emotions. It's a great tool for that. So the previous text that I just read also mentioned that idea of Torah being a symbol of light, and as we hold the Torah, or not necessarily literally holding the Torah, but as we embody the teachings of the Torah, like the mitzvot, we're infused with its light. And this has a lot of possibilities in terms of thinking about the light we bring into the world when we're living by those values and principles and mitzvot. And how might you shine a light on those moments and recognize them in authentic ways in your classroom? So we could go on with this, but I'm just trying to plant seeds here because we're going to run out of time.
Well, we can grow a few. Let's grow a few seeds now with just a couple of minutes. I've given you some stems here to just bring your thinking into the room. I'm thinking about, I think the children will be interested in, I think we might explore the idea of. So could you just take a moment to can be all 3 of these, it can just be one of them. What ideas are you thinking about now? What are you wondering about? What do you think children might be interested in? Let's see if you can bring some of your ideas that you were thinking about before in the text just into the room a bit. Be really nice to hear. Let's see, Layla, that went to me, but you said the idea of dancing with a cherished item. Oh, so beautiful. I can really picture that in a classroom. Kids know what they love, right? They know what's really important to them. What else? What else are people thinking about? I love the idea of, I think children will my children will really be interested in exploring. What else are you thinking about? Yeah, this idea of light, like flashlights in the dark, and the Torah's there, and how do you bring light into the world?
There could be such a thread of light too, because that comes up again in other holidays, like in Hanukkah too. And I could just see like a deep exploration, not just pulling out the light tables, but a deeper idea of light.
Yeah, like how do you, like if the Torah brings light into the world, then what is happening in our classrooms? Yeah, and the idea of making books, like you can make books all year long, right? That should be an all year long endeavor.
And I'm thinking about making a book about the light that each of us brings into this classroom, and we tie both ideas together, because it's not so much about the scientific component of the light, but about the emotionally component
Mhm.
of the light. I
Right,
like how
right.
you, Brett, said, how do you let your light shine? Wow, that's a
Mhm.
powerful
Mhm.
thread that can take us throughout the year.
Right, and how different that is from, okay, we're going to do the person of the week or the star of the week, and which may not necessarily be connected to anything. So thank you, and continue thinking, and we'll move on.
Turning up the joy, I love that too.
Yeah.
Yes, those 3-year-olds will love dancing in a circle, I'm sure. There will be joy in that classroom. I just think capturing joy in that is a really beautiful thing.
Oh,
Okay.
Judy and Veronica, I wanted to say one more thing that, you know, part of the idea of, and these are some planning reminders that Judy will tell us about in a moment, so this is a perfect time to say this. But how do you bring the topic to the children in a concrete way? If you're talking about Torah and they've never seen a Torah, how are you at the beginning, not at the end of an exploration, but as a jumping off point, going to make an impact with children experiencing this special book? And it doesn't have to be bringing, you know, 14 or 20 children into the sanctuary if you happen to be, you know, co-located in a place where you can do that. It may be smaller groups. It may be asking, you know, a local rabbi or cantor to come to your school, and then having a special place, and then children go to do a field trip in small groups to that room to experience it. So it becomes manageable for teachers and children, and they really get to see and look and experience and smell like this old book.
Right. A real Torah, because I think so many classrooms, there's stuffed Torahs and they
Yeah.
dance with the stuffed Torah and they talk about
Yeah.
the Torah. But we forget sometimes when we put these words out there that, do children really know what a Torah is? Even if
Right.
they do go to synagogue, they may not really experience the actual Torah. And so, especially if you're not in a synagogue where it's a regular thing to go into the sanctuary and actually see the Torah, in a JCC or in an independent school, I love that idea of someone bringing it in so children get in small groups that experience. These planning reminders, that's a really specific one for this holiday. And I think for whatever holiday we're doing, these are kind of general reminders as you're thinking of planning some curriculum that with all the holidays, there of course are always books that you can read to introduce the holiday. As was mentioned earlier, you do want to read them ahead to make sure they're good books, because just because they're a book on the holiday doesn't necessarily mean it's a good book that's going to really connect with your children. Or it might be dated and not really the book you want to use. But also to think about the fact that there are lots of books that get a message across as you get into big ideas that aren't written about Simchat Torah. They aren't written about whatever holiday, but the underlying ideas that are in the books support the big idea you're trying to explore. So to keep yourself open to what books you're bringing in. And if you're going to have conversations, to really think ahead about the kinds of things you want to ask and be prepared with that, whether it's around the questions or the fact that you have something to write down or record what they're saying, because what they say could come into your pieces of documentation. They can help you to reflect when you're talking with your team about where this is going to go. You think you'll remember what they said, but you don't. And having it written down or recorded really gives you a deeper sense of where their minds are and where they're thinking, where their misconceptions are, where their ideas are. And it gives you a chance to reflect later. Always, always, I don't think we can say this enough, and it's been alluded to and spoken about throughout here, to think about how are you going to engage the parents, and really inviting them in, whether it's figuratively by inviting them to send something in or literally to come in with something. But always be thinking. I think that's something I used to work with someone who had somebody on her planning team. It was like she was the one who always said as they were planning, and how might we engage the families? That we're always doing that, not even just for the holiday curriculum, but for everything. Remembering to document the ways in which your holiday rituals, and especially those big ideas, are coming to life in the classroom. Make it visible to the families and to the greater community in your building, whether it's a synagogue or a JCC, to have things out in the greater part where, because people in the community can't always come through the school because of security, but how are you bringing it out to the rest of the community, either virtually or in the actual building? And a final thing I have here is to remember that as you do, if you start exploring a big idea, to bring it back to the holiday, because a lot of times if you really take off exploring something, you can get kind of far away from the holiday. The children might really love that dancing, and it might grow into like, well, what would the dance look like if we were really sad or we were really worried? Or you could really start exploring a lot of things, and you start to investigate it and get so far away, and your documentation can help you communicate where it all started and bring it back to, well, this all started because Simchat Torah involves, expressing joy through dancing, and it's led us to do all these other things, but it makes that connection for families and for children to where it all started. I know we're getting out there. I'm going to keep us moving here.
So remember at the beginning that Lisa spoke about the difference between covering a holiday and uncovering a holiday, and how when we go through a list of activities, we can cover like a table with all the crafts versus if we uncover the big ideas. And so we know that educators in our early childhood centers across the continent are a diverse group. Many of you are not Jewish, and there are many people that even though they were raised Jewish, they have only surfaced the holidays. So this slide is a representation of how deepening your understanding of a holiday can result in more meaningful curriculum experiences for children and families. And this is why we are offering this series. So on the slide, the far left represents a more traditional practice where when a holiday approaches, we cover it by planning lots of holiday craft. Often they are the same year after year. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we are familiar. And this is how the way things have been done at our center year over the year. And what we are trying to introduce is a new framework to think about the holidays. So if we spend time growing our knowledge, we will not only increase our comfort and our confidence around the holiday, but will also move you along the continuum from covering a holiday to uncovering a holiday, and understand what it's really all about. So we really hope that this series is that by deepening your understanding of what is underneath the surface of the holiday, it will activate your thinking, which will result in elevating the kinds of experiences you offer the children and the families. Rituals are at the middle, and they are super important. And they are a key component for creating memories. And more especially because they come year after year, right? Even if we will explore a different idea at the following year, the ritual will always be the same. And at the same time, the more we understand where the rituals are coming from, what are the big ideas underlying the rituals, then the richer the performance of the rituals can be. So rituals performed in a vacuum can become rote, but filled with meaning, elevate the children and the family's experience. And it also has the extra added effect of making curriculum planning more energizing for us as educators. This exercise of being thinking about the big ideas and exploring some curriculum implications with them. And the next slide is actually, it offers a different image of the same concept. Remember that we explore the big idea of us being spirals. So the holiday of Simchat Torah comes every year, right? But hopefully we educators are not in the same place. We have a deeper understanding so we can elevate the experiences for our children. It's just another metaphor.
Can I just say too, before Lisa, you go, Ellen put a beautiful picture in the chat, if people haven't seen it, of her children in the unfurling of the whole Torah, which is part of Simchat Torah. And it's just a beautiful picture of the children with the Torah on their laps.
So beautiful.
Which
So
also speaks about the capability, like, right, is we trust the children with being able to explore such a holy book.
yeah. So, you know, as we close out, we just want to clarify that we've given you a lot of examples for possibilities for curriculum experiences and getting started with explorations and investigations, with the hope that your thinking's been expanded a bit and that you'll try some things out and use them as launching points for your own ideas. It's the intention is not for you to go through these slides and plug in every single thing. You'll get overwhelmed. And to sometimes less is more. Get your wheels turning, pick one thing, listen to the children and observe, do that mapping with your colleagues or with yourself, and take a few ideas that resonate with you and see what they'll look like in your classroom. If you're watching the recording later, when you stop, our hope is that you and your team will reflect on what you've heard and begin to think about where you might start. So we really thank all of you for joining us and actively engaging, and that just a little reminder that you can access the recording and the resources for this and previous sessions on the Orchard website resource page, and you can also access it with this QR code. And then someone is going to put a link in the chat for a little certificate that you can get for doing this workshop. And it just has one question. Do it now. It will only take you a second. And then you'll be sent some documentation that you participated tonight. So thanks for being here and happy planning.
Yeah, we'll send you out with a song if you want to hear a little Ellen Allard Torah song. And thanks for being here. Get the idea of that song. Thanks for being here.
Okay, so we danced and we marched. How about if we twirl? Can you twirl? How much fun will that be?
There we go. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.